We all know that owning a small business means you wear many hats, but sometimes you really need an extra pair of hands. Upwork is how good companies find great and trusted freelance talent. With more than 2 decades of experience, with the simple and ambitious goal of pioneering a better way of working, companies at every stage turn to Upwork to get things done and find more flexibility in staffing key projects and initiatives. They access a global marketplace filled with top talent in IT, web dev, marketing, and more. Posting a job on Upwork is easy. With no cost to join, you can register, browse freelancer profiles, and get help drafting a job post or even book a consultation. From there, you connect with freelancers that get you and can easily hire them and take your business to the next level. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com to post your job for free and connect with top talent ready to help your business grow. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
All right, my friends, continuing our discussion here on illegal immigration, deportations in particular. The city of Los Angeles, which has now turned into a disaster zone because of the protests for people, for ICE, simply trying to enforce the law. Now, we've seen this on smaller scales in other places around the country. The left, we have to understand, the radical left believes that they are morally right to oppose the deportation of any person. And if you say that they're an illegal alien, they'll say no person's illegal and probably no person is an alien, which of course they don't know what that means. They probably think it's little green people. But anyway, the truth is, anybody can be breaking the law, and in this case, the people who are here without permission of our federal government are, in fact, breaking the law, making their presence here illegal, making them illegal aliens, meaning that they can be deported. But the left is prepared to have this fight. They think that they're somehow on the morally justified position on this, even though the laws are on the books. Even people who are who claim to oppose this because of their Christian faith. They've made this, which I guess now, again, anytime someone on the left wants to talk about their faith, that's okay. That's not a violation of the separation of church and state. If, however, someone on the right does, that's the worst thing that we could possibly do, and we're a half a step away from creating a religiously controlled state. We are just, on the verge of just absolute tyranny of religion and so forth. But that, of course, is how this game is played. So I want to talk about this. I want to continue to talk about this, and we'll get to that in due course, my friends. I also want to ask you a question. Actually, I know this is rhetorical. You care about this country, right? Yes, you absolutely do. I know that you do. But friends, you cannot fight for this country, at least not as effectively as you could, if you're not taking care of yourself. That's why I am here to tell you about Soul Tea. It's an all-natural, clinically proven supplement that lowers cholesterol safely. Science has spoken on this. The evidence is in. And this product, Soul Tea, has been documented to lower cholesterol in studies. May be able to do the same for you as well. There's no prescriptions needed. There's no doctor's visits needed. This is a great first step to getting control of your cholesterol, taking care of your heart's overall health. All you have to do is take 2 Soul Tea soft gels a day. It's not a drug, but it works, my friends. At least a lot of people say that it works, and the research does as well. I take the product. I think you should consider taking it as well. We need healthy, strong Americans, not just for your family and your faith and your job. Those things are certainly at the top of the list, but we also need you pushing in the same direction we are for this great nation. Do not let high cholesterol slow you down. Go to Salty.com. Promo code Todd will save you 50% on your first 3-month supply and get you free shipping, my friends. That's Salty.com. Promo code Todd. Take care of your heart, my friends. We need you. Selfishly, America needs you in this fight. All right, so we've set the stage. We've explained what's happening. ICE shows up in Los Angeles, and there are protests. Now, well, there is a reaction. There are protests, and there are riots. There are protests, and there is interference with ICE operations. Those things are not synonymous. As I said in the last hour, I gave the ever so popular when a protest becomes a riot speech that I give from time to time on here, just to make sure we're all on the same page. These are, you can protest anything. You cannot interfere with ICE doing its job. I told you last hour. I laid it out. It's abundantly clear that it is the job of the federal government to enforce immigration law. The Supreme Court ruled on this. They wouldn't let the state of Arizona enforce federal immigration law, saying it was the job of the federal government. This is a law that's been on the books. ICE can absolutely do this. Now, you can say maybe they shouldn't. You can make that argument all day, and you can protest it. You can speak out against it. You can go on to media, or you can go to social media, and you can complain about all this if you'd like. You can talk about the separation of families or whatever else, whatever you think is appropriate to the conversation here. You can talk about all these things, but you can't interfere with ICE doing its job. And if you do that enough, and if you turn your protest into riots, then Trump is going to send in the National Guard here. Now, notice that he's the one that did this. He basically said he's assuming authority because Gavin Newsom wasn't going to. Gavin Newsom probably let the city burn to the ground, which reminds me of the wildfires there. But anyway, Gavin Newsom would let the city probably burn to the ground. That's apparently the direction he thinks that this should go. Thinks that ICE should just go away. But why? Why should that be the case? There is a way to fix this, my friends. There's a way to combat this. You can change the law, but the law is clear. You don't like the law, then have people run saying that they're going to change the law. Then if they win an election, they can try to pass said legislation. It's got to be signed. It's got to be signed by identical legislation by both the House and the Senate. If you're so certain that this is a winning issue for you, go on out there. Campaign on this. I welcome you. In fact, I've got a soundbite here that I'm going to play. I'm going to play from someone who's running for Congress. Her name's Kat Abugazela, I believe is how you say that. If I'm not, it's not intentionally being mispronounced, but that's what I believe it is. I want you to listen to her depiction of what is happening. This is, I pulled this off of Twitter. This is her depiction, the left's depiction. She's a Democrat, a leftist running for Congress in the People's Republic of Illinois. And I just want you to listen to how she describes this. I actually welcome this. I say, have at it. I say, let me turn up the mic here, turn up the volume so that everybody can hear what's being said. This is absolute deranged nonsense. Here's what she has to say.
We have to decide, are we allowed to have extrajudicial gangs go around our communities, take people from their homes,
That's ICE.
Ship them to God knows where?
Their
Is
home
the president
countries.
allowed to have his own secret army, secret police that can just take people, hurt people? In Chicago, there was just an ICE raid this last week where they tricked people who were following the legal immigration process into coming for a check-in and then arrested them and assaulted protesters and elected officials. This is beyond the pale.
Delusional.
And just because Stephen Miller wants to get quotas of brown people that he doesn't want to see on the streets doesn't mean that we should think it's okay.
So that's chock full of insane, stupid talk. So Stephen Miller, right? Stephen Miller, she says, wants to, with the Trump administration, have quotas for a certain number of brown people that he's deporting. The only people that are bringing the color, the ethnicity, the race of the people being deported into this are people like you. If you want to target the people who are white and here illegally, have at it. Give a list to the administration. That is not what this is about. I mean, if the people who are coming illegally are coming from countries that have an ethnicity or a race or whatever, that are made up of people of a certain race, ethnicity, etc., then obviously the people who are going to be deported for being here illegally are going to look like the people who are coming into this country illegally in the greatest numbers. It's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me to have to say this. It's the same thing when the left says tax breaks for the wealthy. Well, if you make a true tax cut, if you cut taxes, I mean, in a true sense, it's not some game, it's not some head fake as to what this really is. It's not a tax credit or any of that kind of stuff. It's just saying, hey, we're going to reduce the amount of money that you pay in taxes. If that's what you do, if that's what Congress is going to pass and do, then the people who are going to benefit from that are the people paying taxes, right? And so if you're not paying taxes, or you're not paying as much tax as a billionaire might be, you're going to see less benefit of that. So then, obviously, the people who will see the most benefit from the tax cuts, I don't mean to rock the worlds of the people on the left here, it's going to be the people who pay the most in taxes, right? It's like if you start a diet, and let's say you're 20 pounds overweight, and there's another guy that's 200 pounds overweight, you say, well, this diet has the greatest impact on the people who are most overweight because he lost 200 pounds. Well, no kidding. Are you freaking kidding me? No kidding. The guy that has the most to lose is the guy that's going to lose them, assuming everybody follows the diet, the exercise regimen, all that. If everybody does the same thing, you can sit there and complain, well, this guy lost 200 pounds and I only lost 20. Well, yeah, but you're down to 175 and he's still at 345. What are you even talking about? What are you upset about? What does his weight have to do with your? I mean, so many things that go through my mind here when I listen to this nonsense. This is what the left wants. In fact, if you read the comments, I played this from a TikTok post. This should be a common sense take, is what someone says. The fact that it isn't is a testament to how far we've fallen as a nation. So people are saying she's right. Now, this is delusional leftist world of TikTok in this particular example. Someone else says the fact that all Democrats aren't speaking in plain terms like this is wildly upsetting. This should be easy. It should be easy to say that Trump has secret police. It's ICE. What's secret about ICE? Well, Todd, they're trapping people. They're entrapping them. Okay. You know who's not getting deported? People who are following the legal process. She's just wrong when she says that Trump's deporting people who are trying to follow the process. No, that's not what's happening. That isn't what's happening. The people who are being deported, are the people who are not supposed to be here. They want to conflate this issue. They want to make it about race. They want to make it about ethnicity. They want to make it about Stephen Miller and his quotas for deporting brown people. Stephen Miller has goals for the number of people that we deport. The criteria for being counted in that number is that you are here illegally. If the people who are here illegally, let's just say the vast majority of them are of a certain race or ethnicity, well, should it surprise anybody with the most basic of math skills to realize that the people who make up a group of people, in this case illegal immigrants, Does it surprise anybody that if a group is made up, let's just say a group is exclusively made up, let's just say of white people, just so we don't upset anybody, because you can talk about white people this way. But if a group is made up 100% of white people, and let's say that these white people did something illegally and they're paying the consequence, is it really a fair assessment to say that the people who are enforcing the law are trying to hit a quota to punish as many white people as possible? It's just a bizarre way of looking at it. I have little in common with these people, with people who talk, these leftists who talk in terms, everything they talk about is in terms of race and gender and ethnicity, and it's not a factor in my way of thinking. It's not a factor in my way of thinking for most people. I don't even know who it's not. For the people that I deal with, that I know, it's just not a factor. It's absolutely maddening to me. All of us, regardless of our race or gender, whatever, there's certain things that make us human. In fact, the things that this country was built on applies to all people. Right? We're citizens and not subjects. We derived our rights from our creator, not from our government. We have goals and dreams and ambitions and preferences, and we desire to be free. And when I think about that, I think of all people. I don't picture white people being the sole beneficiaries of this. I just think of humanity. I think of the people that God created in his own image. This is how we were created to live. We were not created to be enslaved by the state or told, or have our lives micromanaged by another group of people. This is madness and craziness. Has nothing to do with anybody's race, religion, culture, ethnicity. None of that. It has to do whether or not you're in this country illegally. The left thinks that this talk is brilliant and profound. They think you need to be saying that Stephen Miller needs a quota for deporting brown people. This has nothing at all to do with it. Nothing at all. Have you seen some of the the rap sheet of some of these people that are being deported? I mean, it's unbelievable what some of these people have been guilty of. Let's just look at a little bit of it. Fox News: immigration authorities highlight criminal history of multiple migrants arrested in Los Angeles. Federal sources highlighted some of last week's arrests in the Los Angeles area, which included violent and drug offenders. Federal immigration authorities said some of the migrants arrested in the Los Angeles area last week had criminal histories that included assault and drug offenses. Again, this isn't even necessary. If you're here illegally, you can be deported. But Trump and his team have been trying to start and define those who are the most violent. This makes the most sense. We have a massive number of people who are here illegally. You don't get a free pass if you've just, broken that law but not attacked somebody. The law still applies to that. I mean, what are we talking about here? There's not a requirement. The left has tried to lull us into a sleep and make us believe that that's required, right? That this Kilmar Abrego Garcia whole, the nonsense here, now he's being charged with, human trafficking, I think? This is the left's non-American American hero. He's back in the country facing charges. He's probably going to be either convicted or deported. We're going to be right back where anyway. Going back to the article here, nearly 45 people were arrested by ICE on Friday alone as officers swept through several locations, including 2 Home Depot stores, a store in the Fashion District, and a donut shop, prompting protests that continued through the weekend against immigration enforcement operations in which the officers raided businesses to arrest workers. The week-long tally of migrant arrests in the city surpassed 100. One man has already been sent back to Mexico after being picked up at a Home Depot on Friday morning. During the demonstrations, David Huerta, president of SEIU California, a labor union, was arrested and charged with impeding a federal agent while protesting. You can't do that. You cannot do that. At the warehouse in the Fashion District, agents executed a search warrant on Friday after a judge found there was probable cause that the employer was using fictitious documents for some of its workers. U.S. Attorney's Office spokesperson Ciaran McAvoy told the Associated Press. President Donald Trump deployed the California National Guard troops to Los Angeles on Saturday after 2 days of clashes between protesters and federal immigration authorities in riot gear. I mean, what are you supposed to do? You are impeding ICE. You are assaulting ICE. This is not... There are peaceful protests around in places. There are out-of-control violent riots as well, and physical interference with ICE proceedings, legal ICE proceedings, I might add. You can't do this, and that's not going to be permitted. So Trump calls in the National Guard. What else do you think should be done? What other crimes do we give people the right to, to interfere with someone's ability to continue committing a crime? That's an interesting thing to think about. Being president in this country illegally is a crime that never officially ends until you're deported. For a lot of crimes, you could say, let's just say that you got into a fight and you were guilty of assault. That crime ended. Right? The assault, it's violent. You should face the consequences. I'm not saying that, but the crime ended. When the crime of being in this country illegally, breaking our immigration laws, you're living in a state of breaking the law constantly, consistently. This is something what is an example of another crime that we defend people's right to commit? Not we, because it's not us. But that's what's happening here. They're interfering with people being able to be held accountable for the crimes that they've committed. And these are people, in many cases, who have a history of violence. Doesn't mean that it's only the case. There's one, Rolando Veneracion Enriquez, 55, of the Philippines, has a criminal history that includes a burglary in Ontario, California, for which he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. And I'm not even going to read what this one is. Actually, I will cover the young years in 3, 2, 1, and sexual penetration with a foreign object with force and assault with intent to commit rape in the city of Pomona, for which he was sentenced to 37 years in prison. He was arrested on Saturday and served a notice to appear. I mean, why wasn't anything being done to this guy prior? What are we doing here? This is what the left is defending. This egregious and unacceptable, violent, disgusting behavior. There's more examples like that, by the way. I'm just out of time here in the first segment of the second hour of the program today, so I'm going to have to take a quick time out, my friends. Continue this conversation on the other side of the break. In the meantime, you sit tight, hang tight. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, the one and only Todd Huff, back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. By the way, program brought to you in part by our friends at My Pillow. My friends, if you're tossing and turning at night, it's time to consider making a change that can improve your sleep, and My Pillow may have the solution to that. Their patented pillows are a game changer, but they've got other products that can help you as well with your comfort and your sleep, like luxurious towels, cozy slippers. They've got very nice sheets. There's dog beds. They've got a ton of products there at MyPillow. It's not just comfort, my friends. It's quality that you can trust. And these products are made right here in the good old US of A. So when you buy from MyPillow, you're not just investing in a better night's sleep. You're supporting American jobs and values. Dare I say America first, my friends. That's something that we can all get behind. So go to MyPillow.com. Use my name, Todd, as your promo code. You're going to get discounts when shopping at MyPillow. Do not wait, my friends. Your best sleep ever is just a click away. MyPillow.com. Promo code Todd. Sleep like a patriot, my friends. Live like a champion. MyPillow.com. Promo code Todd. All right, so we've got this situation that has arisen. And so now tensions are boiling over in Los Angeles. You have Trump who's deployed the National Guard. And why has he done that? Because the left is interfering with the ability of ICE to operate. They are engaging in riots. They're no longer peacefully protesting. They've resorted to breaking the law. That's what's happened here. In order to prevent, or I should say defend, those who have previously broken the law. And so now all hell is breaking loose, and Trump is being called of course, a fascist. This is his secret police, they say. This is the Gestapo. But none of this is true. ICE existed long before Trump. The laws on the books existed long before Trump. What Trump is doing here, I suppose you could take issue with Trump being the one to call up the National Guard instead of Newsom. You could dispute that, debate that. By the way, Hegseth's out there saying if they keep this up, if they're able to somehow rescind the National Guard, that Trump, they'll send in the Marines. So this is just, listen, we have laws on the books. These laws have been there. They've not been enforced. Now we have a group of people that believe by collectively engaging in not just protest, which they're free to do. They're free to express their ideas, and they're free to say what they want to say. They are not free in interfering with the operation. They are not free to break the law and to engage in rioting. That is the problem. They're not free to engage in physically assaulting or interfering with ICE officers. That's why the National Guard was deployed, and you can see why we have pure chaos and pandemonium because of this. By the way, I don't know if you've seen, there's videos out there of Customs and Border Patrol vehicles that have been attacked by rioters. You can hear rocks and pieces of asphalt pelting the vehicles. By the way, too, I should mention last week, ICE set an arrest record, back-to-back arrest records. I haven't seen current numbers. I don't know if it's still the case that they've continued to arrest more and more, but they've arrested, one day it was 2,200 and some folks. The next day it was 2,300 illegal alien arrests as they continue to crack down on what is happening. So this is where we are. This is where we are. And again, this is not going away anytime soon. So you might have seen Gavin Newsom. Let me see if I can pull that up. Gavin Newsom was interviewed and basically said, look, if they want to arrest me, then arrest me. So you got Gavin Newsom being a tough guy here, who, of course, Gavin Newsom is anything but a tough guy. This is just, it's political. But where I get a little bit, I don't know. I know what to expect from the radical left. I know that they are committed to having open borders. They preferred that. They are here to try to get as many registered Democrat voters, or just they're here for the chaos. They're here to oppose Trump at every turn. They're here to promote their morally bankrupt worldview and ideology. Where I'm a little bit, I don't want to say surprised, but when I listen to people who claim to be Christians who say that this opposing ICE is the Christian thing to do, I just, I don't remotely understand that. You know, a country has a right to have its own laws. In fact, we're told in the Bible to submit to the authorities and the ruling authorities of a country. We're to live at peace as much as possible under the rule of law of a country. Now, that doesn't mean that if someone's doing evil things that we can't speak out. In fact, there's numerous examples of people being called out for some atrocious behavior. I'm reminded of David being called out. I'm reminded of people like Daniel in the Old Testament, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They did not follow the edicts of the king, but why didn't they follow the edict of the king? Because it put the Jewish believer at the time in a position to either obey the law of man or the law of God, and they chose to obey the law of God. There's nothing that says someone is entitled to be here in this country. Now, they'll say, well, don't turn away the immigrant and so forth. Context is king in this sort of thing. It doesn't say harbor someone who's broken a crime. If someone is migrating legally into an area, if someone is permitted to be in a place, if someone is in need, we're to help that person, those people. But we're not to be people who harbor people that have broken the law. And that's what this is becoming. It's lawlessness is what it is. And that's not a biblical mandate. Biblical mandate is not to stand on the side of absolute lawlessness. That's not, you'll find that nowhere in the scripture. You will find opposition to certain things that came down from rulers and kings and so forth in times past, but you won't find an order, an edict from God for us to live in or create an environment of lawlessness. In fact, we're to try to, anytime we're in a position where we're trying to make a correction to a policy or a law, we're to try to do so to where it will cause the least amount of collateral damage for other things, culturally or for other people and so forth. But there have been plenty of Christians who have fought for things like the abolition of slavery and so forth. A lot of people that have done those sorts of things, and I know here in this country we've had examples of things throughout history regarding the founding of this country, the opposition to oppressive taxes or taxes without representation. And there's a time to stand up and fight, but there's never a time to engage in utter and complete lawlessness, which is what's going on here. If you want to change the law, then change the law. Try to fight to change the law. The law is on the books. The law is clear. Trump is enforcing the law. Where were the protests when we had previous administrations that were not enforcing the law? And we should be a country of laws, not a country that's just simply engaged in whatever behavior it finds acceptable or politically advantageous at the moment. We have absolute moral depravity in some of these places. We have absolute chaos and pandemonium. And we have the complete justification being given by some, I think some, not all, some well-meaning people that have basically said you can break the law because this is a law that we think we shouldn't have. But we are a nation of laws, and this has to be enforced. And it's good that they're enforcing it. Now, a lot of this is blown out of proportion. A lot of this is misrepresented. The people here that are involved are maligned and attacked and called racist and bigots and xenophobes and everything else. But the reality is that this is the law. The law is finally being enforced. This is what a lot of people voted for. And you can self-deport. If you don't want to worry about ICE coming knocking on your door, you can self-deport. There are other ways to do this. Don't blame the American people for wanting to see the law enforced. These guys lie. They misrepresent what's going on. The Gavin Newsoms, the Karen Basses of the world, the media, they're lying about this, my friends. They're misrepresenting it. They're conflating things so as to confuse you about what's legal, illegal, acceptable, secret police, all that kind of stuff. Out of time this segment, though. Got to take a break, my friends. Back in just a minute. There's been some fighting about this on social media, as you might imagine, too. I'm going to read you a series of tweets. Governor Gavin Newsom of California, Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary for Trump, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, Gavin Newsom, all going at it here, my friends. Gavin Newsom said this, the federal government, this was on the 7th, which would have been Saturday. The federal government is taking over the California National Guard and deploying 2,000 soldiers in Los Angeles, not because there is a shortage of law enforcement, but because they want a spectacle. I wonder the percentage, by the way. This is me talking now, not Newsom's tweet. I wonder what the percentage of illegal aliens in Los Angeles is. I bet it would boggle the minds of people. I bet it would be just boggle the minds of people. But Newsom says that Trump is deploying the National Guard not because there is a shortage of law enforcement, but because they want a spectacle. Don't give them one. Never use violence. Speak out peacefully. So Newsom saying that Trump wants the spectacle. Let me point out a couple of things. First, ICE was not accompanied by the National Guard at first. So that's an important factor. They didn't send the National Guard in on day one. They sent the National Guard in once they realized that I'm sure they anticipated this being a possibility, maybe even a likelihood. In fact, this sort of behavior is condoned and is even encouraged by some of our political leaders. That's why Tom Homan has said that some of these politicians are not going to be just getting off scot-free if they're out there suggesting that people should be engaging in this kind of behavior, opposition to ICE and preventing ICE from doing its job. So Newsom says that Trump wants the spectacle. Well, the spectacle happened when the quote unquote protesters, they're really the rioters, the spectacle began when they engaged in violence. So they should take Newsom's words here, never use violence and speak out peacefully. Okay, fine. I have no problem with that, but Trump's not the one that wants the spectacle. Caroline Leavitt takes to Twitter on Saturday night, 9:17 p.m. She makes this post. In recent days, violent mobs have attacked ICE officers and federal law enforcement agents carrying out basic deportation operations in Los Angeles, California. These operations are essential to halting and reversing the invasion of illegal criminals into the United States. In the wake of this violence, California's feckless Democrat leaders have completely abdicated their responsibility to protect their citizens. That is why President Trump has signed a presidential memorandum deploying 2,000 National Guardsmen to address the lawlessness that has been allowed to fester. The Trump administration has a zero-tolerance policy for criminal behavior and violence, especially when that violence is aimed at law enforcement officers trying to do their jobs. These criminals will be arrested and swiftly brought to justice. Commander-in-Chief will ensure the laws of the United States are executed and fully completed. Executed fully and completely, I should say. And I'm sorry, I glanced at the comments. This is the first comment I saw. Do undocumented aliens or those here have a higher rate of criminal activity? That's the question. Because it's commonly believed that there's a less people who are here illegally have a lower crime rate. But we also know that these statistics are not reported, especially they're not reported consistently by states. I don't know what information you can trust that you're given by your government. Does it stand to reason? Does it pass the smell test to you to say that people who are here illegally have a lower rate of criminal activity? Is it zero? Because I've got examples of people who have broken the law in violent and vile ways. This is crazy, crazy talk. Pete Hegseth takes to X. Forgive me if I've said Twitter. It's formerly known as X. The violent mob assaults on ICE and federal law enforcement are designed to prevent the removal of criminal illegal aliens from our soil. A dangerous invasion facilitated by criminal cartels, aka foreign terrorist organizations, and a huge national security risk. Under President Trump, violence and destruction against federal agents and federal facilities will not be tolerated. It's common sense. The Department of Defense is mobilizing the National Guard immediately to support federal law enforcement in Los Angeles. And if violence continues, here's the point that he makes: active duty Marines at Camp Pendleton will also be mobilized. They are on high alert. So now we've got the possibility of the Marines being set in. Then Newsom jumps back into the fray. The Secretary of Defense is now threatening to deploy active duty Marines on American soil against its own citizens. This is deranged behavior. They're not deployed to go target their own citizens. They're deployed to ensure that the violence stops. They would be deployed to make sure that the cities that you've allowed to turn into violent hellholes at the moment, Mr. Newsom, to be brought under control and for law and order to be enforced. Here we are. This is what it looks like. I told you when we got into this election that if we thought Election Day was going to end any of this, we were crazy. This was only going to get more and more intense. Here we are, my friends. I'm out of time, though. Gotta go. Hang in there. Have a great day. SDG.